preordained, destiny, a script already written. 1966, 1996, and now 2021. Germany against England at a major tournament on home soil. Let's get to it.
Where's your famous? Where's your famous? Where's your famous atmosphere? Where's your
Well, it had to be, didn't it? I mean, all this, what a dramatic night of football. France versus Portugal and Germany versus Hungary. Hungary almost doing it, almost had France scored again. Of course, it would have been England versus Hungary. We dared to dream for a while, but, you know, you just get that feeling of inevitability about it as well, and the fact that it's a home tournament. My energy is zapped from this evening, so I'm going to bring in some help. I can't think of anybody better, really, and to calm my nerves and give their take on all of it. Probably a more less emotional and more considered take. It's Carlos, so let's bring him in, shall we? Hi, Carlos. We got you. We'll get more on his name, don't worry. Standing by for Carlos.
Yes, hello. How you doing?
Oh, I'm exhausted after what I mean. It wasn't even watching England. Watching those two games was like watching running a marathon, mate. How are you feeling after that?
Yeah, mentally exhausting, wasn't it? watching it unfold and the different permutations of who we're going to get, and you're exhausted by the end of it, aren't you?
We were playing every single one of those teams at some point during that
we
game.
were.
I mean, oh my goodness me! But you know, what is it? Gary Lineker said, two teams go out, and in the end, the Germans win. Well, it feels like four teams went out, and in the end, England will play Germany at Wembley in a major tournament. Has to be, right?
Yeah, it was. I suppose it was always kind of set up for that. Like you say, we changed our various opponents, didn't we, several times throughout the course of the evening. Certainly some cracking football tonight, which was great to watch. That's what it's all about, isn't it? And
fantastic.
You know, I'm reasonably pleased with the outcome, if I'm honest.
Are you though? Really?
Yeah, I am. I mean, obviously we've sat and thought about all of the various possibilities, haven't we? I mean, certainly, you know, no disrespect to Hungary, who have played extremely well this tournament, but I think when we look like we might be getting them, I think we were quite pleased just because of their ranking.
Yeah.
You know, for nothing else. You know, that they still would have been a very tough game, but you know, you're getting to the stage now where you're thinking, look, who suits us best, who's most beatable.
Yeah, and you think, from what you know, you were saying to me before, you think that Germany actually would have been your preference out of the three heavy hitters there?
Yeah, if I'd had to choose, yeah, I'd have gone for Germany from the beginning. Yeah.
Why would that be?
The way that I look at it is not particularly what they've done against other sides in terms of their performance or results. I just look at whose style of football suits us best and who is most beatable, and I think it's them.
My worry is, let me first of all say, I think we probably are sort of pound for pound, man for man, a better team than them. I think, you know, if you took those teams and say made, let's say, two club teams without the burden of the international shirt on those two teams, I would probably expect England's team to come out more often than not. I mean, obviously you've got the Havertzes, you've got the the Gundwans, the Cruises, that they're great annoyers, but you feel with the team England would put out with so many Champions League winners, finalists, you'd fancy that club, so quote unquote, to win. But the burden of the shirt lies heavy, Carlos. We've been here before. We outplayed them in 1990. We outplayed them in 1996. You were, I believe, at both those games. You were certainly at 1990.
I was at the 91, yeah.
And yet the Germans still went through to the final in both cases. There still seems to be a psychological fear when it comes to the Germans. They just seem to be this sort of this monster that we can't overcome. Why would it be different this time? Other than the fact that, yes, perhaps they're weaker and they're a team that suit us, but they just seem to have that over us. Why? How do we get past it?
Yeah, I mean, you're right, Lee. I mean, without doubt, they're our nemesis, aren't they?
Yes.
They always have been, and probably always will be, regardless of the outcome of Tuesday night. But the more that I watch them, I feel that they lack one major ingredient that you really do need in these tournaments, and that's pace. That they lack pace throughout their team, and we've got it in abundance. It is going to be a close game on Tuesday night. We're going to have some real intricacy and pace to unlock them, which is why I believe that Grealish and Foden will start, or at least play a major part in the game, and certainly Saka, who really does look a major threat with his pace. So that's what they're lacking, and that's what I think will give us the edge and beat them in a close encounter.
I mean, that sounds ideal. I mean, can we just fast forward to Wednesday and assume that's happened?
Yeah, let's hope so. Yeah, I mean, none of the games are going to be easy, but when you start to look at that side of the draw, I'm sure Gareth Southgate will be sitting down with the team in his meeting and saying, "Look, guys, you have been presented with another great opportunity on a plate to get to a final."
Yeah. And Germany really is the key game, isn't it? I mean,
it's the hurdle. I mean, at the World Cup in Russia, we got Colombia, and which is an easier game than Germany. But now we're facing our hurdle now. If we can get past this, there is a route to the final of this tournament.
And the quarterfinal would be no worse than Sweden or Ukraine, the only away game we would play in the tournament. So, I mean, what you just said, multiply it, right? I mean, it's just I mean, Southgate will be saying that to them, won't he? It is.
Of course he will. Of course he will. He needs nothing more to motivate them than show them the chart of the two sides of the draw. I mean, we could have ended up in the other side, which is horrific. I mean, Belgium, as I said to you earlier on, Lee,
France.
They've won their group, but they're looking at
Portugal,
Portugal, Italy, France. I mean, they must be wondering what's happened to them, and then compare it to what we've got. So it's a very imbalanced draw. There's a very strong side.
It's an incredible draw, really, isn't it? I think Spain, Italy, France, Belgium, Portugal. It's incredible, and I think is it just the Netherlands in our half of the group?
We would, yeah, we could meet the Netherlands if they get through, and of course they're going to be a major test. But compared to what we could have faced, we have a relatively easy route.
Germany is really the only. The single hurdle, isn't it, that you would fancy us in the quarterfinal, and then, my goodness, it could be, who knows, with the Welsh, it could be Wales in a semi-final, couldn't it? I mean, it's not beyond the realm of possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we could end up getting Wales. I mean, there's a lot of things can happen. I mean, the other side of the draw which we're in is there's a lot of evenly balanced games in there. There's going to be a lot of goals. There's going to be some high scoring games in there. So it's a fantastic opportunity. That is clearly the motivation. But we have got to focus on getting it right on Tuesday night, because if we don't get that right, you can forget the rest of it.
Doesn't it have the air of extra time and penalties around it, Carlos? Doesn't it have to? Isn't that the way it always happens?
Yeah, it's probably the way it's always happened in the past. But no, I'm quietly confident that we will defeat Germany, and I don't think it's going to be an extra time and penalties.
You think we'll defeat
scenario
in 90 minutes?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
What did you say?
I might be wrong, but I don't know. I just when those games finished tonight, and I knew we got Germany, rather than thinking, oh God, dreading it, thinking that's it, we're out. There was a calmness about me. I thought, no, I'm okay with this. We're going to win this one.
What were you saying? And be honest, when we got them in the 2010 World Cup, we came out of that pretty terrible group experience, and we were drawn that game in Bloemfontein.
Yeah, I remember being in Bloemfontein that day. Yeah,
we always G it up, I know, but I mean, what can you honestly remember how you were feeling then, what you were saying, and how do you feel, if at all, different this time?
Yeah, I mean, it's a different feeling this time, and obviously getting the Germans last time in Bloemfontein in the round of 16, I was thinking, yeah, we could be out here. Even so, Lee, that game hinged on an extremely poor decision, which wouldn't have happened in today's game with VAR, goal line technology.
Well, they were superior in that game. I mean, they run our defence a bit ragged. I think Upson and Harry were at the back. But yes, I mean, if that had stood, the shape of the game could have changed.
Of course there were. It would have been 2-2. We would have been in the ascendancy, and it could have been a completely different game. But in terms of teams, they were superior. I look at the two sides now, and I'm fairly confident that Germany will be having their meeting tomorrow and thinking, oh dear, we really could have done with avoiding England, because we're going to be in for a torrid time. It could be a bit of a running battle here that they're not really going to be wanting to engage in.
Well, I've had a couple of text messages from friends in Germany who won't be for the next week. They'll be regular comments. And the first one simply said, he said, we'll see you in the next round. You will easily finish us. Germany is rubbish and just a disappointment. And apparently their media, I mean, of course, their media is going to be right on their back tonight for that game. I mean, if we were unconvincing against Scotland and the Czech Republic, I think Germany will be slated for, playing in Munich against, a very, very low ranking Hungary team. I expect their media will give them a far bigger slating than we had after Scotland.
Well, I mean, the Hungarians, I've really enjoyed watching them this tournament, because they've put up spirited performances, and perhaps what they've lacked in a bit of quality at the highest level, they've made up for in commitment, passion, intensity in games. I mean, look at the goals they scored against Germany tonight. Persistence in the area, headed goals. They punished Germany at times, and Germany came off that pitch breathing a sigh of relief, because they were 10 minutes from going out. So when I look at that, I think, with perhaps our little bit of extra quality, and the intensity and pace of the game that we can play at, I don't think they're going to fancy that encounter with us one bit.
No, I mean, that would seem to be the case, and I think probably the sort of buzz around there is that this will be our farewell, which would of course be Jogi Löw's final game in charge of Germany. I just worry that because it would be Jogi Löw's final game in Germany, it won't be Jogi Löw's final game in Germany, because he won't want to go out, having been knocked out by England. And I just think, they'll be the underdogs at this game, which I really wish they weren't. I really wish England were the underdogs. And it's all going to start tomorrow in the media, the thumping and the proclamations and all that. And I just think that puts more pressure on us, on England, to win on Tuesday night. And so I do fear that the same thing will happen with these huge games, that England will falter under that pressure. I mean, I really hope I'm wrong, but I haven't seen enough from England either. As Germany, I saw enough from Germany in the second game against Portugal that after that game I said that was the best football I've seen in the tournament. So that worries me greatly, because they could bring that game to England. I mean, this was a game tonight they were expected to win easily, and I think that was partly why it didn't happen for them tonight. Portugal,
they haven't had three consistent performances, have they? I mean, they played France, and I mean, I know it was only 2-0, but it was a fairly convincing win, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Then they played very well against Portugal, and won that. And then tonight, they've really struggled. So it's very un-Germany-like,
Mm-hmm.
that they tend to deliver a 7, 8 out of 10 performance every game, and they've not been doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you just said there, Lee, you kind of don't know what Germany's going to turn up, do you?
Well, I mean, as much as the motivation, you talk about motivation for Southgate and the boy. I mean, what about their motivation? England at Wembley, underdogs. What more do they need than that to get them fired up?
No, I mean, they'll be looking at the draw as well and thinking they've got a path to the final. But I think it will have shocked them a little bit tonight, coming that close to the brink. I mean, normally in tournaments, Germany always qualify fairly comfortably, don't they?
Mm.
Yeah, they don't scrape through.
No,
they always get through fairly, with a bit to spare, don't they?
Yeah.
Whereas tonight they're on the brink, and knowing their culture as I do, there will be a lot of soul searching and analysis as to why that happened.
Yes, and to your point before, it's not like the Germany we played in 2010, who just swept everything aside in their group, didn't they? And sort of marched to the top of that group. So this is a very different. It is a more self-doubting Germany. I'm certain of that. I mean, just a quick word about that group again. I mean, Portugal. I mean, I'm not a fan of Portugal, as you know. I just think that they're a very negative team. I think that again, it's a terrible group, very difficult group. But, they've kind of fluked their way out of it yet again on 4 sort of unconvincing points, and would have been out at another tournament, of course. And it's this format that suits them. It's this format that allowed them to somehow win it. 5 years ago. I mean, they were on the verge of going out, and did it. And I just think, that it's such a negative team with the best, arguably the best player in the world is unfortunate. But how would you have? I mean, would you have rather played them?
No, not at all. I mean, what you've just said there, Lee, they've reinvented themselves, haven't they? As the archetypal tournament team, doing enough, scraping through, finding a way to win. They find a way to win or hang on in there in games, and it's not a fluke. It's an attitude of mind. It's psychology, and they get through. And as a result of that breeds mental toughness.
Mm-hmm.
I really wouldn't have fancied playing them. I think they would have found a way to beat us. I think our defence would have been quite psychologically phased by playing against Cristiano Ronaldo, who, to be fair, he's still a great player, but he's not what he was.
No.
You saw a couple of times tonight where the ball ran away from him, or his sharpness wasn't quite there.
No.
but
Kante had
it'd
him
still
pretty
be a
well.
threat.
Yeah,
Sorry.
absolutely. Kante had him quite well in his pocket for a lot of the game.
Yeah, yeah. If you got the right players, you can largely position him out of the game for spells. I mean, you know, like in the past, his influence on games was a lot greater. He'd be involved a lot more. If you look tonight, he phased in and out a lot. But I still think we would have got phased by him,
Yeah,
which is why I don't want them. I'm glad we've not got them.
Really interesting. Yeah, I mean, I certainly, going out to Portugal is one of the most brutal. I hate going out to Ronaldo. There's something that just winds the English up, isn't there? And I think certainly in a last 16 game when our confidence is not up and we haven't grown into a tournament, I agree with you. I wouldn't really wanted to play them. The problem is that the team we are playing, I still think we have a similar problem with, though there isn't that particular superstar in there who was really wound England up in the past. And I mean, the last time this happened, of course, on home soil, you had these characters like Muller, if you remember, his prostrating when he scored that final penalty. That really wound England up. I don't think there's the same animosity towards the German players now as there was before. You know, this, at least on the pitch, there's no scores to settle between players. There's no real sort of, you know, oh him versus him. Whereas, you know, Portugal, people like Pepe and Ronaldo, I mean, they wind England up, you know. So it's a little bit of a weird fixture. This Germany, Germany aren't the villains that they used to be. I think they actually are quite admired in England now, strangely enough. I think France and Portugal are probably the ones that English fans like less right now. So, you know, maybe that's a good sign. Maybe that'll, you know, be a little bit less of a mental pressure on England. But, you know, there's no ways around it, Carlos. And I give you the headline, you know, on a day of pretty serious news. I believe the Russians and the Royal Navy were having a bit of an argy-bargy today. But, you know, the front page of the BBC News is not that. You know, potential war games in the Crimea. The front page of the BBC is, I did spit there. Let me just tell you what it says. Germany book England day after Hungary draw. You know, that's. I mean, if you're watching in the States, I know some of you will be. I mean, it's hard to put into words how big this game is anywhere, but this game at Wembley, it's only happened twice before in two of the most seminal moments in English footballing history. The World Cup final in 1966, and the second most or third most, depending on whether you look at the Italian 90 semi-final, but the Euro 96 semi-final. I mean, how many iconic moments were in that game, Carlos? And I think the one that we all think of, apart from Gareth Southgate's penalty, we'll have a bit more of that in a second, was Gazza's, you know, how did he miss that? I think Barry Davis was commentary. I'll never forget it. Was, oh no, how did he miss that? How yeah, I can't exactly something like that, but you know what I'm talking about. Everybody knows what I'm talking about.
It's one of those moments in football where you keep rewatching it time and time again, and somehow it's like you think something different's going to happen. You think, oh, he's going to get a bit closer. This time he's actually going to get on the end of it. It's that close.
It has been edited that way. ITV edited what if real, put it in there. How? I don't.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Why do you possibly think it's going to be a different outcome? It's just that you're willing him to get on the end of it, aren't you?
And it was the golden goal, and it would have been the end.
It was a golden goal. I'm pretty sure. I mean, I've seen interviews on the TV with Paul Gascoigne about it, and even he can't believe that he just didn't get on the end of it. Whether he was worried about straying offside, whether he just reacted a little bit too late. Even, I think, maybe the dive of the keeper. I think it was Ilgner at the no, it wasn't Ilgner, was it? Was it Ilgner? It was Ilgner at 90, wasn't it? I can't remember if it was 96, but I think the keeper's dive put him off a bit as well, which made him just delay his run a little bit. And, you know, like you say, Lee, golden goal. So we've basically gone out that tournament just on a fraction of an inch or a second. That's how fine the margin is.
And a couple of minutes before that, Darren Anderton hits the post. It comes again out to Gaza, doesn't it? And he just can't get hold of it. And
Can't get hold of it then either. No, comes it in too quickly probably, or I remember the chance. But yeah, so it's just these little fine margins, and like you say, when those things don't go for you, it starts to become self-fulfilling prophecy. You start to think, oh God, here we go again. It's not our night, and then sure enough, it doesn't become your night, does it?
No,
but
yes, no,
you have to overcome it.
I mean, the irony of it is we've outplayed Germany in most of the tournament games we played against them. I mean, the glaring exception being 2010, but I mean, 66 obviously with the right team won. 1970, that infamous quarterfinal that Graham Taylor always used to say to me was the beginning of the end of the strong mentality. We'll beat anybody. To be 2-0 up and then lose 3-2 right at the end, the two goals that equalised in then extra time. It was one of the most humiliating moments in English football, and we didn't qualify for 2 World Cups after that. But in many ways, we were the better team in the game. We just, you take your eye off the ball with them for 10 minutes, and that was that. And then, of course, in 1982, people often forget that one, a draw, 0-0 draw. I don't think there was much in that game. I think Karl-Heinz Rummenigge, if I'm not mistaken, hit the bar with a thundering shot. But England were pretty tough in that World Cup. They never lost a game and still went out in that weird format. And then 1990, where overall I always say that Germany deserved to win that tournament, but England certainly deserved to win that semi-final against them. So, on the balance, maybe the winning the World Cup was right. But I mean, that game is again so etched into our memories, isn't it? It's iconic and it's fabled, and you were there.
I went. I mean, I think as well, when you look back through tournaments and you look at results in games, if you actually mark down alongside them, which was the better side, the better side doesn't always win. I'm not even convinced whether the better side wins 50% of the time. I don't know what the percentage is, but I know for a fact that there's a relatively large percentage where the better side doesn't win.
Portugal 5 years ago.
So why is that? How is that happening? It's happening because there is more to it than just the performance. And it's about the psychology, it's about mental toughness, it's about finding the ways to win, it's about overcoming adversity. It's like some sides are never beaten. Leicester are a good example in the Premier League. They never lie down. They always seem to get out of games at the end with a goal or get something out of it. It's no fluke. Well, it's because they're tough, they're strong.
But this brings me to my point, which is that we've got the absolute, leading exponents of that over the years. I mean, what team in the world has been better than Germany for that? Germany and Italy maybe, but they just don't know when they're beating the Germans. I mean, no matter how poor their players might be, or good or bad their players might be, they just will not. They just do not know when they're beaten. They have bad tournaments. Let's not make mistake and say, oh, they're invincible. I mean, they went out of the World Cup in the first round, absolutely. But given the sort of knockout situation, when it's the pressure is just unimaginable on these players, they just seem to be able to take it, absorb it, and they're masters at it over the years. I mean,
it's ingrained in the mentality. There's no doubt about that. I'm not sure whether they're the leading exponents of it anymore. I think probably Portugal, Italy, France have got the edge in that department now, and I'm not sure they've got the air of invincibility anymore. I mean, I think Joachim Löw had quite a tough job with them. He did what Germany like to do, you know, every few years, a reinvention, a rebuilding, bringing the young players through. And I think he tried it this time, didn't he? And it didn't really work. And he had to end up going back to the old guard a little bit more, didn't he? And involving players who wouldn't normally have stuck around so long. So I'm not convinced they're the power that they once were.
No, which it takes to your point about pace, bringing people like Muller back. Cruz still excellent, but probably not quite at the level he was at when they won the World Cup. That astonishing, you know, performance in Brazil, which was truly incredible. Yes, no, I mean, they did have it, but they do. On the other hand, they do have that little bit more experience with those players than we do. I mean, if you think about it, we've got the Hendersons, the Trippiers, the Kanes, but you know, other than that, we're not going to have the likes of Muller, the Mullers and the Cruzes and the Neuers of this world who will have that mental strength. So we're going to be relying on what you're talking about, which is ability, you know, and you know, I just think that we will probably have to be quite convincing if we're going to do it, and we probably will need something like a 2-0 lead. I think at 1-0 you're just it's almost just like at 1-0 you're just asking for them to get back into it, and they would just find a way to get back into it. I think England need to come off flying. I think England need to put in a supreme performance, to be honest with you, no matter how poor we think they are, no matter how, you know, unmatched, you know, we think they might be to England's pace. You know, quoting you again, at this level, at the highest level, knockout stages against a country which just knows, which has just passed masters of it, albeit not so much now. I grant you, and I agree with you, that Portugal, France are the Germans of today in a way. You know, they've taken over the Italian and the German mantle, which I never thought about. And the Germany team of the decade is very much comparable to the France team of the 80s and then later the 90s. You know, a flair, you know, passing, moving team, inventive, not conservative at all, which is what I've loved about German football in the last few years. But you know, they still will draw upon their ancestors, however you want to put it. You know, the expectancy. But I mean, it's a fascinating matchup. It's in many ways you could call it another derby game. It's such a massive game. Like the whole world will probably have their eyes on it. It's late, but it's here. Euro 2020 and 2021, and Gadsby's England is still the place to come for all your England news throughout the tournament. Follow the drama, the ups and the downs. You know there's going to be plenty of them. Euro 2020 on Gadsby's England. Just briefly though, I mean, talk about England's performance last night. You were there. I sadly wasn't. You know, there were flashes of good moments. Grealish and Saka seemed to be good, but I just don't know how much you can take from that game, because the Czechs didn't want to win it. I think they were quite happy to avoid what we are now not avoiding in Germany.
Yeah, I mean, Czech Republic, they didn't show an awful lot of ambition, did they, once they went behind? I mean, you never really felt that they were going to throw the kitchen sink at us and try and get back in the game. I think you said at the time, when you mentioned about their attitude, that they probably seemed quite happy to finish second in the group.
Didn't bother in the second half. They just wanted to get off.
No, we had flashes. I mean, like I say, you know, Saka, very exciting to watch. Pace, energy, commitment, worked extremely hard as well. He really put a shift in. You know, it was relentless, really, and it was good to watch. Good to watch his performance. Really enjoyed that. Same with Jack Grealish. You feel that there's so much more to come from him, and you know, and in a really tight game where that little flash of brilliance is needed, he can provide that, you know. So yeah, there were definitely flashes last night, and you think, it'd be exciting to see it all to come together in one performance. But at the end of the day, you know, undefeated, we haven't let any goals in. You know, 7 points, we'd all have taken that. And, you know, there's only one thing better than playing well and winning, and that's playing all right or not playing very well and winning, isn't it?
I'd happily take that against the Germans. And yes,
Yeah.
still undefeated at Wembley in normal or extra time in a major tournament. I mean, it's still as vulnerable as I think we think we might be. We are very difficult. I think, you know, no team would want to face England at Wembley. France, Germany, Italy. I think that's a fair comment, you know, to say that. You would want to avoid this. You would want to have avoided coming second in that group to play England at Wembley, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the amount of games that have been at Wembley, I mean, you know, it's almost akin to facing the tournament hosts on their own home patch, isn't it? You know, and with the best will in the world, however badly or however well or however average England are playing, England don't lose very often at Wembley.
Mm-hmm. They really don't. They really don't. And you know, it's you're hard pressed to find a game. I think the last time was Denmark, but it was a weird game because, you know, Maguire was sent off, and you know, they got a penalty, and so you almost like brush that one to one side. But yeah, so you know, it's interesting that both Germany and England will have to do something that neither of them have done really, which, well, Germany have of course knocked us out on penalties. If it doesn't go to penalties, it's just white. This is, you know, pull away the penalty scenario right now. One of the two teams will have to do something different, but the bigger onus is on England, and it's in a wider sense, Carlos. We're going to have to do something that we haven't done, not since 96, not since 90, but since 1966, which is to damn well beat an elite team in a knockout stages of a competition. And I know people often put their hand up and say Spain, but Spain in 96 were not an elite team. They were they were like us. They were somebody who just, you know, never performed to their so-called abilities. We still haven't done it, Carlos. You know, why? How do we overcome that this time?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we are due a big, thrilling, electric performance, aren't we? I mean, so far it's been pretty consistent, really. The last three games. I know the Scotland performance, and you know, and to an extent, the result was a bit of a disappointment. But the three performances have been pretty consistent, and Gareth Southgate will be quite pleased about that, I think, because, you know, if you know your side's going out on the pitch delivering a 7 out of 10 every time, there's a comfort knowing that. Look at it from the Germans' point of view. You know, they've gone against France, not played particularly well, got beaten. You probably would have expected France to beat them as well. Then they've gone and turned in that performance against Portugal, and now they've nearly gone out tonight. You know, he must be scratching his head, Joachim Löw, thinking, hold on a minute, you know, where's the consistency in my team? What's going to be the next performance? Who's going to turn up next time? Whereas Gareth Southgate knows that he's got the foundation in place. What's really important on Tuesday night is that the bit of stardust that we sprinkle on that foundation is absolutely right. That he gets that right balance of players in the forward areas, where we've got to provide more of a threat from various positions. For example, in the Scotland game, he took Phil Foden off, which I think was the wrong decision, replaced him with Jack Grealish. He got two men on him immediately. Scotland knew immediately how to try and nullify the danger, which is why we've got to have Grealish and Foden in the team. You've got to have a multi-threat.
Well, I mean,
that's how you start.
I particularly thought the combination of Grealish and Sterling was excellent. I think they seem to have worked out something very well. I mean, I certainly wouldn't drop Raheem Sterling, so I'm not sure, you know, what he would do. I mean, Sterling has scored both our goals. He pulls defenders into 6s and 7s when you don't see, because it's not on television. It's off the ball stuff. I still think Sterling is key to England, really. So you know, it's a tough one. So, and I was just very impressed with the way the three of them, Grealish, Sterling, and Saka, there seemed to be quite a good understanding between them, a good symmetry between them. Foden is an extraordinary player. He brings that, like Grealish, he has that, X factor. I just don't know how he would fit into it. I mean, you're then looking at, if you do that, you'd have to drop somebody, wouldn't you? And he's, and like him or not, Southgate has a defensive mentality a lot as well. I mean, in a way, he does what you've said, which is that you said it very good. Attackers win matches, defenses win tournaments, right? And I get that. But I mean, sometimes I just think, against, I guess it proved to be necessary in a way, but do we really need, almost in a way, a back six? It wasn't a back six in the sense that Phillips and Rice are central defenders, but it was sort of constructed in such a way that it was a back six, that they were defenders unless they had this space to go forward. We almost didn't have a central midfield. We almost yesterday had a back four, two defensive midfielders, and a front four. I mean, it was strange. It's there didn't seem to be a pivot there. It seemed to be okay, though. Again, who knows with the Czechs? But do we maybe need to put something like Foden in a more central midfield position, which I know he likes? And then what do we do? Do we take a Phillips and a right? Do we risk not having one of them there? Now that Maguire and Stones are back, very solid. They've been excellent together. You've got Shaw on the left now playing with Maguire, so they're Manchester United colleagues. You've got Kyle Walker on the right playing with John Stones, his Man City colleagues. So I mean, what do you do there? I mean, you have to take one of these players out. I mean, we'll be talking more about this in the coming days, but I mean, what do you do in that situation?
Controversially, and again, this is really just my opinion based on what I see. This is not the game for Harry Kane.
No, I mean, that's
afraid.
What I was wondering whether you might say that.
Germany know our threat, and our threat is pace in behind. So they're going to defend very, very deep. With Kane or any other orthodox centre forward on the pitch, they've got a focal point. They've got somebody to focus on, somebody to man mark. If ever there was a game for the false nine and Foden in it to drag those central defenders out and create the room for Grealish and Saka, etc., and Sterling, this was the game. This is primed and ready for that scenario.
A pacey front four that would run a defense like theirs, which is a little bit waning, ragged.
Fluid movement, interchange, and Foden in that false nine role, asking questions of their central defenders to draw them out, to create that room.
I mean, it does sound, irresistible almost. Foden, Saka, Sterling, and Grealish. I mean, you'd be out of breath in 10 minutes as defenders, wouldn't you? I mean,
you wouldn't want to defend against those guys, no. And of course, then as well, you see, the other luxury that you have with that, if you do play that fluid, interchangeable four, you can still stick with your two defensive-minded midfielders in Rice and Phillips to give you that platform, and also to provide that screen against their threat. So for me, that would be the side to beat Germany. And also as well, not just because of the system, watching Harry Kane, I don't know, it doesn't seem right to me. I'm not sure whether he's fully fit. I'm not sure about his movement, his mobility. He did some good things in patches in the games, but there were also times where I thought he's off the pace. He doesn't look his usual self to me. I don't know if you felt that as well.
I something hasn't been right. I mean, the trouble is though, when he's not scoring goals, it's easy to pick flaws that maybe are there, maybe aren't there. But he does look a bit leggy and lethargic. But you see, and again, I think this is something you've said to me in the past. A goal would change that. I mean, Lineker was saying that in 1986, he had two terrible games and then came on and scored a hat-trick against Poland. So it's one of these. I mean, Southgate will not drop Kane. I mean, what you said is theoretically great, but it's not going to be the starting lineup, as you well know. Kane will start. I suppose paradoxically, you could say, well, this is the game where Kane will come alive. What more, does it need? And it's possible as well that could happen. I mean, if they get it right, then they could still trouble the Germans, and Kane could be that a target man. The Germans just still cannot cope with England's pace, and it gives Kane that room and that space to then come in and score. It concerns me, and it seems to be a bit of a chain around England's neck at the moment. And the media's on his back and saying that, without Harry Kane scoring and being at the top of his game, England have no chance. Well, that isn't true, is it? I mean, if no. England do have a chance without Harry Kane. We have these players, but it seems to be discouraging, and it seems to be, I think, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not helpful. It's counterproductive to sort of put that on him when we know we have this squad of players who are incredibly creative. We haven't seen it yet, which is what worries me. I mean, 2 goals, is not enough. But I mean, we'll see with Kane. I mean, if there ever was a game for him to come alive, then this would be it. But I think you do make some good points. Why have we only scored 2 goals, Carlos?
Well, first of all, the opposition. The opposition haven't made it easy for us. We've not been engaged in majorly open games. We've been engaged against 3 teams who have been organised, that have kept the game tight because it's to their benefit to stay in it as long as possible. They've all defended relatively deeply and competed very, very well. And
didn't need to win against us either. Theoretically, there was no. They would have liked to have beaten us, but they didn't need to win against us, did they?
Didn't need to win against us, and didn't engage in an open running battle against us. And it's a bit of a paradox, isn't it? That sometimes maybe the better and more expansive teams you play against, you stand a better chance because they're actually going to come out and engage in a more open technical contest with you, which we've not had so far. And then you look at the goals that we've scored. They both come from Sterling making good runs, ghosting on the blind side into good positions and finishing. So maybe that's where your goals are going to come from. But there are more goals to be had, provided we get the right system and personnel on the pitch. And sometimes when you are playing with the same centre forward and the same threat all the time, you do become a bit one-dimensional, and also make it easy for the opposition because they're knowing what to expect.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, Germany will, of course, be very different. They will attack. That's one thing they don't know how not to do. They do attack. That's in there. That's the new breed of German DNA. So in that sense, what you're saying is that would make attacking options for England might open up, because inevitably Germany will, by attacking, will leave gaps. So maybe that is the case. But they have to come from somewhere, because we just have not been prolific. And to be fair, it's not just this tournament. I mean, the 2 lead-up games, it was 1 goal, 1-0 against Austria, 1-0 against Romania. All right, you can consign them to the sort of heap of history. There's nothing. They're not going to be remembered. But it is a slight worry for me. And I just, with this group of players who have been banging them in for fun all season, it does concern me a little bit. We're going to wrap up in a sec, Carlos, but just a quick thought about this whole Mason Mount, Ben Chilwell incident. I mean, well, first of all, it doesn't look like Mount will be picked simply because he'd be available, but he wouldn't have trained with the squad. But if he were available, would you put him in that starting 11?
The thing is with Mount, he's excellent all round in both an attacking and a defensive lineup, which makes him a fairly certain starter in your team before you see how the game pans out. This is a guy who from a very, very young age, all the way through the England system, has been schooled properly in tournament football. And that's why you see the intelligence of his performances in the games. And again, it's a manager's dream because you're guaranteed the 8 out of 10. He's not a risk. So yeah, in terms of starting 11, he's going to be on there. But the team that finishes against Germany will be very, very different depending on how the game pans out.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. And yeah, Mount is definitely, he's got that. And I mean, this whole situation seems ridiculous. We won't sort of rehash it, but well, I mean, look, Carlos, I'm glad I managed to catch you. I mean, I just feel exhausted after that. I mean, I think also the emotional strain now of knowing it's Germany is tiring as well. I mean, if you're not English or German and you're watching in the States, then I mean, this is about as big as it gets, a fixture.